Human Development, Week 3. Week 3. Our topic for this week is childhood. So you'll read chapters 5 through 8 to learn about early childhood and middle childhood. I also encourage you to watch the videos and read the articles posted in the modules labeled Early Childhood and Middle Childhood. You can earn up to 55 points this week. The first way to earn points is by participating in the Week 3 discussion. It's labeled CP3, and you'll earn 6 points for making your initial response and 4 points for responding to 2 peers. Remember, both your initial response and your response to peers must be substantive. Substantive posts add to the learning environment, so you bring something new or add something new to the conversation. You also want to proofread your response and eliminate any errors that you might have made when you were typing really fast trying to get it in. But you can earn up to 10 points by participating in the Week 3 discussion. You can also earn 20 points for completing P3. P3 is an outline of the paper that you'll be turning in Week 5. So in P1, you selected your broad topic and narrowed it down to a specific topic and came up with the title. In P2, you gathered some reliable resources and created an annotated bibliography. And now in P3, you're going to give me a skeleton or an overview of the topic, and you're going to incorporate your references in this outline. You can earn up to 20 points for doing that. The last way to earn points for Quiz 2 the last way to earn points in Week 3 is by completing Quiz 2. You can earn up to 25 points on this quiz, and the chapters are 1 through 4. So basically, the science of human development, and then prenatal development, and the first 2 years of life. There are 11 multiple choice questions and 1 short answer question, and it's a timed quiz, so you have 25 minutes. And if you don't do well, don't be too alarmed, because remember, I give 1 makeup quiz at the end of the term. That will sub in for your lowest quiz score or a missed quiz. Now, you don't get points per se for working with your group, but I would strongly encourage you to begin earnestly working on your group project this week if you haven't already done so. And there's a slide coming up on this a little bit later. So the remainder of this slideshow, I'll talk about the Quiz 1 results, and I'll give you some tips for our test taking, and also I'll go a little bit over the group project. Class statistics for Quiz 1. All right, so we had 23 students who completed Quiz 1, and the high score was 100%, and the average was 76%. So of the 23 students who completed Quiz 1, 2 students scored an A, 7 students scored a B, 6 students scored a C, 5 students scored a D, and 3 students needed improvement. Now, if you fell into the D or needs improvement category, don't be alarmed. Like I said before, I give 1 cumulative quiz at the end of the semester, and you can use it to substitute for your lowest quiz score. All right, so the most frequently missed questions boil down to a question about independent and dependent variables and quantitative versus qualitative research. So I'm going to read the question and give you the right answer, but also want to make a few comments about these terms. So the first question was, in an experiment testing the effects of amphetamine on learning in rats, the amphetamine is and the correct choice was independent variable. So the easiest way to separate the difference between an independent variable and a dependent variable is to remember that your independent variable is the variable that the researcher has control over and is manipulating. It is also the cause in an experiment. The dependent variable is the variable that is being measured. It is the effect in the experiment. So in this example, the experiment is testing the effect of amphetamine on learning in rats. Okay, so what they're manipulating is the amphetamine, right? You can imagine an experiment where some rats are getting a certain amount of the amphetamine and other rats are getting either no amphetamine or a different dose. The learning is what's going to be measured. The learning is the effect, and the amphetamine is the cause. All right, so your IV has levels. Usually there's some of it and then none of it, or there's varying degrees of it. And your DV is also referred to as the dependent measure. All right, the next question that people frequently got wrong was the use of children's school achievement scores to compare the effectiveness of education within a school or nation is considered what type of research? The answer should have been quantitative. I'll read it one more time. The use of children's school achievement scores to compare the effectiveness of education within a school or nation is considered what type of research? So quantitative research is basically research where there's a heavy reliance on numbers, whereas qualitative research is research where there's a heavy reliance on words. So in a typical quantitative study, you're going to be looking at the numbers, using the numbers to make your case or prove your point. Whereas in qualitative research, you're typically looking at telling a narrative or story to make your case. Tips for quizzes. So the first thing I want to mention is the short answer portion of the quizzes. On the quizzes, you want to make sure your short answer responses are complete, correct, clear, and concise. So by complete, I mean thoroughly answer all parts of the question. Don't leave any opportunity for missed points. So if the question asks about neurocommunication, then you want to at least mention the electrical activity, and you want to mention the chemical messengers, so neurotransmitters. You probably would also want to mention dendrites and axons and synapses, but at least mention the core elements of neurocommunication. So make sure your answer is complete. By correct, make sure your information is accurate. Leave out your personal opinion, your thoughts, your feelings, unless the question asks about your thoughts and feelings. Instead, focus on the information that you glean from reliable sources and relay that when you're answering the question. Okay, by clear, proofread your response and eliminate typos and grammatical errors. Also, use headings or spacing. So if the question is posed in a way that it has 3 parts, A, B, and C, when you respond, answer with A, B, and C. Use spacing or bolding if necessary, but you want your response to be complete, correct, clear, and concise. By concise, we mean don't ramble, don't make it redundant, don't put a bunch of fluff and fillers in there. Just make sure your answer is getting the job done. Okay, now some other tips I have on the slide for quizzes in general. Read the chapters prior to taking the test. When you take a quiz or a test, know that it's based on the information that's presented in the textbook, and that same information is available in the modules. I develop all of my quizzes and tests, and often I use test banks. So I'm telling you the secret. The secret is make sure you've read the textbook, make sure you've looked over the information in the modules. Okay, be mindful of the time allotted and plan accordingly. So with the quizzes, you have about 25 minutes to answer 12 questions. So you want to work, relatively quickly, but not so quickly that you make errors. Okay. Decide if you want to answer the short answer first or last. For some people, you might decide that you spend more time on the short answer portion and you'd rather get that out the way first. You can do that. Even though the questions are presented one at a time, you have the flexibility to go forward or backwards. So you make that decision prior to taking the quiz and then, respond accordingly. Next, I have skip questions you're not sure about and come back to them later. When you're taking the quiz, you want to build your confidence. So if you read a question and you can't come up with the answer, you're not so sure about it, go ahead and skip it and move on to another question. And I suggest this for a couple of reasons. One, the more correct answers you answer, the more you're going to build up your confidence. And two, it's possible that you might find the answer to a previous question further down on a different question. Okay, so it's best to use the test as almost use it against itself. All right, be strategic and have confidence. So, you can do better on the test than you think you can, because there's test taking strategies that you can employ that will allow you to be successful. And I've given you some links on the upcoming slides of videos that I encourage you to watch, and also page numbers in the textbook that also give you tips. Tips for tests. The information on this slide will be useful for completing quizzes and tests in this class and also in other classes, but more generally, this information is useful for assessment in life. Okay, so I want you to pay close attention to the information on this slide. All right, you can see that there's a graphic of two people facing each other, and one is titled growth mindset and the other is titled fixed mindset. When you're faced with a failure, so a time when you put forth some effort and you didn't reach your goal, is your attitude failure is an opportunity to grow, or is your attitude failure is the limit of my abilities? Okay, so someone with a growth mindset, they believe that when you fail, when you don't meet your goal, it's an opportunity to change and to get better. So they say things in their minds like, I can learn to do anything I want. My effort and attitude determine my abilities. Feedback is constructive. I like to try new things. I'm inspired by the success of others. So that's a growth mindset. A fixed mindset, you might hear this type of thinking. I don't like to be challenged. I can either do it or I can't. My potential is predetermined. When I'm frustrated, I give up. Feedback and criticism are personal. I stick to what I know. My abilities are unchanging, and I can either do it or I can't. All right, the problem with the fixed mindset is that you're basically limiting your potential. It's true that biology constrains some of what we can and can't accomplish. However, there's enough research, scientific research, to show that most people can improve their skills and abilities in a lot of different domains. So maybe you're not that good at memorizing things. Well, if you start learning some mnemonics and you start applying yourself, you can even improve your memory. Okay, so having a growth mindset is more about realizing that you have a little bit more control over your success in life than you may be giving yourself credit for. So when you take these quizzes and these tests, I want you to come in with a growth mindset. Now, some other tips are space studying. Suppose you decide you only have an hour to dedicate to studying for an upcoming quiz or test. Well, if you have 1 hour and that's all you have, you would be more effective if you studied in 15-minute increments over 4 days rather than sitting down for 1 hour at a time. And this has to do with the way that we're wired as human beings, the way our brains process information. So space studying is much more effective than cramming and doing a one-time session. Next, be prepared. The more prepared you are for an assessment, the more likely you are to have confidence. And that confidence, again, is going to align with the growth mindset. Like I said, these tips extend beyond tests in just my class. This is information that you can use in your everyday life, in your personal relationships, and in the business sector. So come prepared. All right, the last one that I have here is be mindful of physiology. And what I mean by this is that if you're not getting enough sleep before you take an assessment, you're sabotaging yourself. Go ahead and get some sleep the night before, okay? It's necessary. I myself tend to be a night owl, so I know what it's like to want to stay up late. I also am prone to binge watching shows, so I get it. But when you have an assessment that's coming up and it's deemed important, go ahead and schedule some time to get that sleep in and make sure you're well rested before taking the assessment. Now, in addition to getting enough sleep, physiology is also talking about your body in general. So what are you eating? It would be better to take the test not when you're stuffed and full, but also not on an empty stomach. So you need to be hydrated and you need to be well fed. So well fed, well rested. That's what I mean by be mindful of physiology. Now, there's tons more tips for tests and quizzes and assessments in general. And I've given you a link on this slide to a researcher, cognitive scientist. His name is Dr. Stephen Chu. He's a professor at a university in Alabama. And you can see that he has a series on YouTube And the one that I'm referring you to is called How to Study Long and Hard and Still Fail. He talks about the ways to study that are going to produce results where you can be effective and you can, get a higher score and spend less time than doing these techniques that basically set you up for failing. AutoLock provides on-demand proctoring services for schools and universities. Their simple, affordable platform operates around you. No scheduling, headaches, or bulky software downloads. CF prioritizes academic integrity and has partnered with AutoLock to hinder cheating using their patented mobile device detection system. Tests 1 and 2 and alternate test 1 will be administered using AutoLock. So I'm going to make an AutoLock practice quiz available the end of this week, and I suggest you take it anytime prior to taking the midterm, because when you take the midterm, you will be required to use AutoLock, which is a proctoring service, as I just read. Pointers for P3. First, use APA style. And if you're thinking, oh, I don't know what APA style is, well, you're in a psychology class, okay? So it's not unusual that you're going to be required to use the style that's consistent with the discipline of the class that you're taking. Also, if you're a nursing student, you're going to be required to write papers in APA style quite frequently, so you might as well get used to it. What I mean by APA style is that you're going to have the entire document is going to be double spaced. You're going to use 12-point font, Times New Roman. You're going to have 1-inch margins on all 4 sides of the paper. You're going to have a cover page that has a title, and the bylines include your name and the name of the institution where the paper is being published. In this case, you're at College of Central Florida, so that would be on page 1. And then you're going to have your content pages and then a reference page. Now, for this particular outline, I'm asking that you incorporate your citations throughout the document. If you don't do this, you will lose points. So you're going to need to include an in-text citation at the end of your phrase or your sentence showing where you're getting this information. Okay, so the outline is just a skeleton, an overview of what you'll be talking about in your upcoming paper. The paper is not due to week 5, but as you can see, the assignments all go hand in hand. So P1, you selected your topic. In P2, you found some references, some sources you're going to use. In P3, you're giving me an outline. P4 will be a abstract, and then in P5, you actually turn in the paper. So some of the ways that people lose points is by submitting this assignment on time. Remember, the late policy is that it's 10% off per day. So if you submit it on time, there's no penalty. But if you submit it late, it's 10% for the first day, 20% for the second day, and 30% for the third day. I don't accept assignments after 3 days. So work to get in on time. Use the questions thread and the resources in the paper module. The questions thread is there for you to pose a question. Often students will have a question that is really a good question, and other students in the class may know the answer or they may have the same question. So if you post a question in the questions thread, everybody in the class can see it and anybody can respond. I check the questions thread a couple of times a week, so if you post it there, you're likely to get a response from me or from your fellow class members. Now in the paper module, I've included links to a sample outline, and I'm asking for an alphanumeric outline. So the sample outline includes an alphanumeric as well as one that uses points and decimals. Focus on the alphanumeric outline for our class. I've also included a template, so that means you can take that document and literally just substitute your information for the information that's there, but it's already laid out for you. And then last but not least, consider getting a second pair of eyes. If you have a friend who's also a college student, or you have a friend that's a college graduate, or just even a partner, let them take a look at your work and see if they understand the points that you're trying to get across. And that's a good way to catch little mistakes or, ambiguity. The group project, we're coming to the end. Hang in there, people. So in the first week of the class, you were assigned a group project. And really all you needed to do was to review what was expected of you for this group project and kind of get to know the classmates in your learning team. In week 2, you were given a topic, and the goal was for you and your group members to narrow down the topic. Now in week 3, I'm expecting that the group will research their topic and start assigning roles to different group members. In week 4, you'll probably want to be pulling the presentation together, actually developing the presentation. And then in week 5, the presentation is due. So the actual due date is June 14th, and one member will upload a slideshow, a YouTube video, a PDF, or whatever you guys decide, however you guys decide to develop your equivalent 15-minute oral presentation. One person will upload it with everyone who contributed names on it, and then I will release it to the class in week 6, and you'll get feedback from your class in week 6. You'll also get feedback from me in week 6. That's all, folks. You made it to the end.